So have you started introducing yourself as Hammond, James Hammond yet?
I tried it one time with my wife, and she laughed me out of the room.
Yeah, see, what can I say with your wife? That's not when you're supposed to use it, right?
I'm not meeting any other any other women at the moment, Gunnar.
Hey, even men, who knows, right?
Maybe, yeah, maybe. Bit of a power move.
You walk into a room with the EPA and, okay, gentlemen, my name is Hammond, James Hammond. Do you think that would go down well?
Well, that's it. Gunnar, with all the feedback that we've been getting, I think both of our reputations are going to precede us. We're making a name for ourselves in the industry. Like whether that's a good name or a bad name, who knows? But it's a name nonetheless.
It is. We're getting feedback, which is good. I love it. Otherwise, we're spending so much time on these podcasts and we thoroughly enjoy it. But it feels like you're talking into a void, and then you see some download stats, which we are very, very pleased with. But it's like, okay, would someone say something out there, please?
I know. I mean, we'll try and encourage a bit more interaction at least through like LinkedIn and stuff like that.
Hey, I'm going to catch you off guard again. I have a totally different question for you.
Yeah.
Say someone comes along, a famous Hollywood director comes along and says, man, I've been following you on LinkedIn. Your life is spectacular. I think I should turn this into a movie.
Guilty as charged, yeah.
You can pick the actor that plays you. Which actor would you pick?
Well, I know I know what I want to say, but I think what I should say is I mean, I've always been told that I look like Richard Gere, like a young Richard Gere, I might add.
Yeah.
So maybe young Richard Gere might be a good option.
Actually, I had time to prepare for this question. Right? I actually thought, and this is such a cliche, but I thought a Tom Cruise wouldn't be a bad one for you. A younger Tom Cruise.
Yep.
For looks wise, sorry about to say height wise. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. If I could choose, I think I always thought Jake Gyllenhaal was quite a good actor, and a handsome man. And so, yeah, I think Jake Gyllenhaal would be a good pick as well.
Yeah, I don't know him.
You'll know him if you see him, I'm sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So Gunnar, you've got to do the same. You tell me who would play you in the story of your life.
Whoopi Goldberg.
Just mix it up totally.
Okay, aside from the, everybody says, the Brad Pitt, but Arnold Schwarzenegger would be
similar physique.
No,
similar physique. Eh?
Exactly. At least similar physique and accent, maybe. Matt Damon is someone I thought of. I would pick.
I love Matt Damon.
And then there is a few others. For example, John Krasinski.
Oh yeah, he's great.
Steve Carell, of course.
I think Steve Carell would be a good pick, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
I like him more and more as he gets older. Like I like what he does now better, I think, than some of his older stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can't really identify with when he's in the office, but the later work.
Yeah. You know what I'm thinking, Gunnar? I don't, because I'm thinking of actors that look like you at your age now. I don't think I've ever seen a photo of young Gunnar. Maybe for our audience, you should put up a photo of Gunnar at 21.
I can do that. That's no problem.
I could do the same. And then maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll have to have a look at that and see, if that sparks any other actors who look like you at that age.
Well, I'm not necessarily because they look like me, but when you have a question like that, it's always what kind of characters have they played that you kind of identify with, right? And which male doesn't identify with Jason Bourne?
That's it. International man of mystery that you are, Gunnar.
Well, that would be more the Mr. Hammond, James Hammond, right? So, what do you think? Is it time to introduce our next guest, Andrew Doig?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's from the Australian Sustainable Business Group. And let me give a little bit of a background for him. He has a background in waste service from 1980 to 1992. He was then 7 years with the Australian Industry Group. And his main task there was, listen to this, the review of the POEO Act.
Okay. Yeah.
so no wonder he knows so much about that subject. He was also on the board of Waste Service, and in 2000 he founded the Australian Sustainable Business Group, so that's 24 years ago, and he's doing a fantastic job over there. So we came across him. I paid for one of their online seminars, and my credit card had expired. So in the ensuing email exchange, we started chatting, and in one of them he said, "Hey, by the way, I love your podcast." And that's always an easy way of pleasing us.
Yeah.
So anyway, I managed to pay. I listened to the seminar, and we decided that Andrew needs to be a guest on our podcast. One of the biggest discussion points that we have is that Sydney is very quickly running out of landfill space, while we are happily filling it up at record numbers. But there is a very limited amount of space. And Andrew, more than anybody else, has really good insight into that subject.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And yeah, you definitely have some good insights onto waste strategy and I guess, where we're headed in terms of landfill space and that sort of things.
So there's a reason why this one is called the train wreck. So everybody listen in.
Andrew, how are you?
Thanks. Yeah, very good.
Long time no speak.
It has been, but in fact, I found that Gunnar lives right next to a good friend of mine. So
there you go. Small world.
Do you guys know each other?
I think James probably came to a few of my functions way back. And I've been running ASBG since 2000. So
yeah,
and have been running lots of mainly contaminated land seminars. I suppose it would be more in James' line of work, but I tend to help the environment manager in an entity and provide services in that scope.
I think we met when I was pretty much fresh out of uni when I was working for Brickworks, Andrew.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Because it was along those lines. It was because I was their environmental manager in New South Wales, and I did some training through ASBG, which was awesome. Actually, it was really great. And I still, like, some of our staff now are still members, and we jump on your waste training seminars, especially, which are great. So yeah, we kind of go a little way back, but sort of patchy, I think.
Oh, okay. Well, okay.
I thoroughly enjoyed your 2-hour one on the POEO Act. I watched it not live, but the recording.
Yeah, sure.
I really like that. And of all the speakers, I liked you the most because you were the only one who dared to be ever so slightly critical about it. The Maddox lawyer was also slightly critical in the presence of the EPA. But it's a seminar. People can buy it online. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, it's still available. Yeah.
I put that link in the show notes because I really enjoyed that, and I think everybody in our industry should listen to that. I liked it.
Yeah, I think. We'll see. I think COVID certainly damaged the seminar set a bit.
Well, look, we were really keen to chat to you today. I suppose, you've got a lot of experience across, like you said, many different areas. We were keen to talk to you about we've called this episode the train wreck. That's what we're thinking we're going to call it, the train wreck.
Yeah, well.
So we would like to drill down a little bit, I guess, into the waste-related aspects around the waste levy and preparedness in New South Wales for, I guess, what we need in the future.
Yep.
And I suppose this is just off the back of the COPS waste conference as well, which is probably good timing. I didn't manage to get to that. So it's probably timely. I know that this was discussed a lot. We don't really do structure at BTS, so we just kind of, roll with it a little bit. So, I mean, where would you like to start?
I think, the topic, the coming train wreck in the Sydney area on waste management can be traced back to 2021 when the New South Wales government's own report came out saying that by 2028 we'll run out of non-putrescible landfills in Greater Sydney area.
Yeah, right.
There's a need for at least 3 million tonnes per annum extra landfill capacities post 2030. In addition to that, another 500,000 tonnes of waste processed by energy from waste facilities. They probably underestimated the amount of waste. I can quote Frank Costomer. He did a few really good articles in the Fifth Estate, and he reckons they're out. I mean, Sydney generates, 19.4 million tonnes in 2020 of waste, and about 35% of that, or about 6.8 million tonnes, goes to landfill. and probably about 80% of that is the Greater Sydney area, which I think, it doesn't quite include Newcastle, but includes a lot of Wollongong area. They reckon that, we'll be running out of non-putrescible waste very quickly, but it takes 10 years at least to site a new landfill. Now, I mean, that's taking something like up to 10 million tonnes per annum by 2040. The problem is that we just have nothing in the pipeline. I was on the board of the Waste Service in the late 90s, early 2000, where we got through an extension to Lucas Heights to increase its capacity, virtually doubling it. And that was done because we ended up holding like 50 meetings with community groups trying to deal with the NIMBY, because waste is always NIMBY. It's been there for decades.
Can I interrupt, please? I hear NIMBY. I don't even know what this is.
Oh, sorry. Not in my backyard.
Oh.
Is the term that's used where people just say no because I don't like what you're doing. It doesn't matter how good it is for everyone. It's me, and you're damaging my local backyard. So go away.
Okay, I get it.
50 meetings, mainly with sporting group, because they're giving $1.50 per tonne to the sporting groups to set up sporting infrastructure. And it took 50 meetings to agree on how that all should be divided between them.
Yeah, right.
And when it came to a vote at local government stage, the NIMBYs were outshouted. That actually worked, and that's an interesting model to use. And now Australia is finding it very difficult to build the infrastructure just for renewable energy. They're getting knocked back on transmission lines, solar farms, wind farms, and the NIMBY thing has just got grown bigger and bigger, and state governments seem to be more and more sensitive about any naysayers. Getting back, so Woodlawn was, when I was on the board of the Waste Service, we actually looked at Woodlawn Mine, because it was original mine, and knocked it back and went for some other place in Cessnock. The Cessnock Council was in favour of it. They were getting $1 a tonne or $1.50 a tonne kickback from the whole thing, until, of course, then their rich residents go against it, particularly the wine owners. Then the whole parties come in. Then you have your, objection crowd that comes in, and suddenly the council just changes tune like that. Bang, no, we don't want it. Veolia then decided, we'll take on Woodlawn, and they must have spent, from my reading, 70 million, something like that, in trying to get all the approvals through. They actually had to do it jointly with the transfer station in Chullora, and it took them 10 years to actually get approval, which I think they opened early 2000. Now, that was a big hole in the ground. I think it had a 40 million tonne capacity, and it will run out in 2036, which is also a problem because there's still nothing in the pipeline to replace that.
Can we go back a little bit and clarify a few terms here? When you're talking waste, and let's aim at people who are not waste specialists.
Okay.
Anything from the red bin to contaminated mulch, for example, is considered waste. And there's different classes for that. You mentioned the non-putrescible waste.
Yes.
Which is what? That is what kind of waste?
Yeah, certainly. That's simple. The way landfills were designed back in the 70s was that kitchen waste, which had very quickly rotting food, meat and vegetables and fruit, was called putrescible waste. And because of that, they generated a more contaminated leachate. And then you had the other waste, which was everything else that could go to landfill, that wasn't hazardous. And that was called non-putrescible waste, which was mainly building construction, paper wastes, vegetation waste from trees, but not material that will rot quickly. So putrescible means it rots quickly, and non-putrescible means it doesn't.
Okay, good. So, and you're saying, and I read the New South Wales Waste and Sustainable Material Strategy that you mentioned here, which is already a kind of an interesting document, because the first thing that you see is the minister's picture in there, which for me already takes a lot of credibility out of it. What is this? Is this an election pamphlet or whatever it is? I don't know, right? So then you read it and it's all full of mothers running in flowery fields with their children in the yeah, I'm like, all right, fair enough.
Marketing BS, I call it.
Yeah, but in there it says, as you mentioned, it says, well, Sydney is going to run out of the non-putrescible waste by 2028. That was a document that was released in 2021.
Yes.
Now it's 2024, and we're running out of landfill space by 2028. That suddenly is kind of close.
It's worse than close. They should have started this back in 2018. There should have been planning proposals for waste facility.
In that document, right after when you scroll through all the peaks and the minister's acknowledgements and whatever, I see that they have actually set some goals. There's no ooh, and this is going to happen if we don't meet it, right? That's always the biggest problem. But they set some goals. How are they going with these goals?
Good question. There is some thought out there that we can recycle everything. The issue with that is, yes, you can, but it will cost you an infinite amount of energy, and you'll probably harm the environment more. So there's the first rule of recycling. If you're going to harm the environment more by recycling, then it's better to send the material to landfill. For example, recycling a very cheesed up pizza box, the amount of extra energy, chemicals, and wastewater to convert that pizza box, remove the fat, and make that paper into a recycled product will actually harm the environment more. So that's rule one. Rule two, you've got certain wastes that must go to landfill because they're legally required, like asbestos waste, which you guys covered in that wonderful podcast on the mulch issue. Thank you. I love that. That was really good. I won't talk more about asbestos. We don't have enough time.
You're sick of that already. Of talking about it, not from the asbestos. Don't get me wrong here. But
And then you have the residues that come out of recycling facilities. They have to go to landfill. There's no other place for them to go. I think in the report they call them residual waste. Then you have material dug up from contaminated land, and that material you can try and get a resource recovery order exemption, a specific one. Good luck with that. So dig and put it into landfill is usually the most economically sensible way, even though we're paying very high landfill fees. Woodlawn was the last one to get approval. There was another one that was tried at Latham, which is kind of northwest of Wagga. An old tin mine, and the tin mine company was actually behind it, and but it got knocked back by NIMBY completely. I mean, it was all going to be rail hauled, and they ticked every box they possibly could. But you were becoming a state significant development. It's the only way to get a landfill in that's probably not really local and above 12,000 tonnes a year. Then the minister can pull the plug, and I think that's what happened, or the council just recommended that occur. So that was the last time, and that was knocked back early 2016. And that was the last time any commercial attempt to site a new landfill occurred in New South Wales. And there's been nothing else because it's virtually considered to be a loss-making exercise, and no one in their right commercial mind would do it.
I agree with everything you're saying, Andrew, and if I could just offer some other perspective on that as well. It is very much left to the private sector to take on the risk, and there are some very simple things that could be done at a high level, like, for example, designating new large landfills as critical state significant infrastructure, where the minister could decide to put that designation on it, which would then kind of give more certainty, I guess, as to at least the outcome of the planning process. But we're definitely not seeing that. We do a lot of planning work. I do a lot of planning work, and the NIMBYism is alive and well. I'm still seeing issues around even basic things like urban encroachment, where I won't say where, but there's a waste facility that we work with where they used to have a nice buffer of about, a kilometre between them and the nearest residential property. All of a sudden, over the last few years, there's been housing development after housing development that has gotten closer and closer and closer to them. And then all of a sudden, they've got the EPA knocking on their door saying, hey, we've got odour issues here. We've got, this issue. We've got this new issue. And we're all sitting around shaking our heads like, well, it needs to be managed. But also, have you noticed how we've got less and less space to operate over time? And it's such a basic planning principle that it's just not being upheld. So it's like the perfect storm of things kind of coming together. I'm I don't see how we get to where we need to be by 2028 either.
Well, Victoria's done a few interesting things. For a start, they have a noxious industry zone, and they have at least a half a kilometre distance between things like landfills or any kind of waste management.
Yeah, right.
And that's been in for years. And of course, the anti-development lobby, whatever you want to call them, the NIMBY lobby, trying to chip that away all the time.
Right.
Have a great example many years ago, like Gosford Council's sewage treatment plant got into trouble with odour emissions from the own council. But of course, the guys there at the sewage treatment plant said, well, it was the council themselves that allowed the residents to locate within 100 metres of the site. What do you expect?
Yes.
Shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah.
But again, probably property developers on the council.
The cash for council, like the money they get, it's just too tempting for them.
Well, here's the issue. 2028 arrives. Sydney's non-permissible landfills run out. Kemps Creek, Penrith Waste, all close. And there's nothing else. There's a potential for like the Central Coast, the local government to expand its landfill. And they could put up the charges and make a nice fortune out of it. And so could a large number of local regional councils around. But these landfills aren't private. They're going to probably say, no, we're only going to accept local waste.
Yeah.
Because once it comes in, even if they have a higher gate fee, it's going to be a flood. The closest one is Southeast Queensland.
Unreal.
So going back 5-6 years ago, that's when Queensland put in its waste levy. Why? Because it was receiving 1.4 million tonnes from New South Wales into its own landfills and decided it didn't want to do that. There was an arbitrage. In other words, there was a difference of $0 to $130 a tonne in the levies. So they whacked it up to 85 because it's roughly about $60, $70, $80 a tonne is where the cost of transport becomes too heavy to actually take it up there. So it has to be at least that type of advantage. But when we're running out of landfills and have nowhere to go, I see that pipeline opening up again.
In terms of what the options are, I mean, I think it's safe to say that landfills within the Sydney area or even just beyond is probably not realistic. The planning provisions can't change quick enough, I don't think. That sort of leaves us, I guess, with regional landfills, and I suppose the transport option would have to be rail, like it would have to be electrified transport, right? Because the carbon cost in the future is just going to be too high. So where do you think that leaves us, Andrew? Like, what are our options in New South Wales? Are we talking coal mines in Western New South Wales and then transporting by new rail lines? Or
there are so many mining holes around Sydney, it's not funny. There's hundreds.
Yeah.
And you're talking massive volumes that could go in there. Of course, the issue all comes down to NIMBY. That's going to be almost impossible considering that, we're seeing massive protests about wind farms off the coast of New South Wales. We're not China. We can't just mandate it somewhere, but there's going to have to be a much better government approach to dealing with NIMBY. I mean, the federal government's even using the phrase YIMBY, yes, in my backyard. Trying to encourage that.
So what's the solution? We have two waste experts here and one guy listening, that would be me. What should we do?
Well, I put this to the minister. We had a meeting in June last year, and Tony Chappell, the CEO of the EPA, said that there is a waste strategy infrastructure paper coming out. We're still waiting. I've heard there's another consultancy doing a waste capacity assessment around the Sydney area to try and redo what the 2021 strategy did. We'll see how that progresses. Again, it's a typical government response. Oh, we have to do another report on this. What will happen? 2028 arrives and it's going to be a train wreck. Now, this kind of reminds me of what happened in Naples around 2008, 2009. Naples' local landfill filled up, but everyone knew it was run by the mafia. All sorts of things were going into the landfill that shouldn't. Locals just had an absolute gutful of the whole thing and rejected any expansion of the landfill, rejected any other proposals. So everything got tarred with this extreme, not my backyard brush. And Naples then had garbage on its streets for 6 months before Berlusconi, under pressure from the EU, saying this is a health issue, reopened the old landfill and then for a couple of years so they could build a waste-to-energy plant for Naples, which they did, but it only took in half the waste. The rest of it, they ended up training to Switzerland and France and still do. But you can go on to Google You can go Google or even YouTube. YouTube, just look up Naples waste crisis, and it's got these streets. You go down these country roads around Mount Vesuvius, and they're like 2 or 3 meters high on each side, going back 4 meters for kilometers.
Unreal.
Many of these were lit and went on fire, and now the EU has taken Naples local government to court for breaching human health rights.
And yeah, what a human health disaster, and what an environmental disaster to have just uncontrolled waste disposal across such a huge area. Like, I think a lot of the time when we're looking at these kinds of issues, we don't consider what the alternatives are properly. And the alternative that you just set out there is something that could realistically happen. And it would be just so much worse than any new landfill could be, especially with, what we know about how landfill cells should be designed now. I think it all comes back to leadership. Like, we really do need leadership at the highest levels in New South Wales to make it really clear that it is a critical infrastructure issue.
Well, worse than that, I think they're going to wait until it is a crisis, because then it will hit the media and they go, oh, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
And then they'll be able to implement some sort of emergency controls, which, by the way, has already been enacted. I mean, Woodlaw, when the rains hit, the railway line was cut. And they're going, where's this waste going to go?
I would like to see on the Department of Planning's homepage maybe a big red bar with the end point, and we can see it every day slowly filling up. A lot of the time we need to visualize things a little bit, or help people visualize, because that's where we're at, isn't it? Things are just slowly just trickling in, filling it up, and we're going to reach that point soon.
Yeah. Do you remember during the drought when everybody got obsessed with Ragamba Dam and the graph that we had, and then suddenly we ended up very quickly with a $400 million desalination plant, which, by the way, hasn't produced any water yet. But look, I'm not kidding, but that's not what it was supposed to do. Yeah, it's in reserve. Here is something that I know worked extremely well in Switzerland. When you take your garbage out from any household, it has to be in a specified yellow bag. And these yellow bags you can purchase at the supermarket, and the bag costs around $10. And if your garbage is not in one of those bags, it doesn't get collected. And it's Switzerland, not Italy, where people do care whether their garbage gets collected or not. So that simple, I would almost call it a trick, immediately reduced the household waste drastically, by volume at least.
Okay.
Think about it, because I take my garbage out to the red bin, and you don't even think about it, right? It's council rates. You whinge about it every quarter, but the garbage just goes. If you have to pay $10 for every bag you take out, you suddenly start thinking about it. What am I going to do with this, I don't know, styrofoam that I just bought that came with my TV?
Yeah, look.
Half a cubic meter of styrofoam.
The Swiss come up with incredible pragmatic ideas, I have to say there.
Yeah, but that would be putrescible waste, at least, because that one we're going to run out in, I have the paper in front of me, a few years later. Should we do things like, I have another one. I have another really good one for the non-putrescible waste. Can we please address the asbestos waste issue yet again? Because we're filling up our landfill with stuff that doesn't need to go there.
Yeah.
In massive amounts. Absolutely. And I did a massive submission to the chief scientist and engineer to look at alternative ways to landfilling asbestos material. They were kind of suggesting that in terms of reference, having methods to allow resource recovery orders and exemptions on certain types of asbestos material. As I said, if you can bury it into an infrastructure project, under road easements, under dam constructions, railway, and as long as it's buried and signed off by a contaminated land auditor and appropriately monitored, what's the problem?
Yeah, that would, because, we're talking about saving, crushing up your milk bottles before you put them into the, and to reduce your volume. I do that in the morning, and in the afternoon I go out and supervise a remediation where we chuck 50 truckloads of so-called asbestos waste into trucks, and we ship them out to the landfill. And I'm thinking, you know what? Suddenly the urgency of me not producing so much waste in my kitchen has a different kind of urgency to it.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I can chew your leg off about asbestos as well. One of the big issues that they're going to have to deal with is the carbonation process, because you can carbonate asbestos. It's white asbestos, magnesium silicate. You can turn it into magnesium carbonate. And this is the major method that are used in global weathering to reduce CO2. But the problem is we have a mountain range from Orange to Canberra that's a large amount of serpentine in there. But the trouble with serpentine, it comes in various physical forms, and one of those forms is called white asbestos. If they allow and reduce these rules, I see a potential process like where you drive your soil into a processing facility and under high pressure and a certain treatment, then they can actually treat the asbestos soil to be asbestos-free. But, you can't guarantee that when you have a presence-based level of asbestos.
Yeah, but most of the time we don't even need to do that. The amount of bonded asbestos in soils that we come across is so minute. It's irrelevant. It's completely and utterly it's nonsense. We've beaten that horse to death several times already. Like, we don't need to separate the asbestos out. Give me a break.
Yep. Well, I mean, the current rule is you can't reuse anything that has any amount of asbestos in it.
Yeah.
So, again, you see, just get caught. But there's also, there's major research going on, pilot plant scale carbonation of serpentine. But they can't make that into anything that's asbestos free because some serpentine will be asbestos. So I think it kills that in New South Wales, even though they've got a major pilot plant in Newcastle.
Yeah, okay, but let's face it, we don't have to have science come up with solutions to a bullshit law.
Yeah.
Right? We have to have the bullshit law come to meet science, let's face it.
I agree.
Right? It's just the wrong way of going about it.
Totally agree.
It would have been nice if they slipped that change into that recent bill as well, wouldn't it? They slipped a whole bunch of other changes in there. That would have been good too. Just change the definition of asbestos waste.
Totally agree.
I think there've been so many good things that we've touched on here, and I'm thinking that I think we've talked a lot about landfills, Andrew, but obviously there are other pieces to the puzzle as well, and obviously waste reduction is definitely a part of them. And we need to continue to go up the hierarchy. I might say, this is my opinion as well, is that we focus so much on recycling, we forget about reduction and reuse.
Mm.
And so I think that it's all about going through the hierarchy and actually focusing on those higher levels. And then, of course, waste reduction, recycling. And then, but at the end of it, that's the point we've been discussing a lot, is that, like you said, there will always be residual waste, and we do need options for landfills. So, yeah, we do need to get the planning and policy settings right for that.
Yep. And I haven't even talked about energy from waste, because that's the next level.
Well, there's so much we would love to talk to you about. I think I can definitely see you coming back on here in the future, Andrew, if you'd be happy to do that. And yeah, we should definitely have a chat about energy to waste, because it's an area that I really know nothing about. So I'd love to hear from you about it.
Okay, look forward to it.
All right. Well, Andrew, thank you for your seminars, and thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Gunnar.
And you have other meetings planned, so we gotta wrap it up here.
Okay.
Thanks for joining me.
It's good fun.
Thanks a lot, mate.
Catch you guys.
Thank you. See you, Andrew. Bye-bye.